Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Your Gray Matters podcast. My name is Jason, here as always with my dad, your host, Neil. Hey, Dad, how you doing?
I am fantastic. Hi, everybody.
And I was just reading. Did you know that Canada, along with the United States and Mexico, is going to be hosting the next World Cup?
Yep. Soccer, the beautiful game, is coming back to Canada for the FIFA World Championship 2026.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And I think that we might actually know someone who's tangentially involved in that. Is that ringing a bell for you?
We are really excited because I have a friend named Mighty Joe Mewey. Joe Mewey on our show today. What a soccer legend.
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable. He's played for Team Canada. He came to this country as an immigrant after the Communist Revolution or within a decade after the Communist Revolution in China. And boy, talk about setting your goals and dreams and your focus on them and then succeeding. Plus there's a mention of Jackie Chan that you won't want to miss.
Absolutely. This is an action event for everybody. Joe Mewey, a success story in sports, a success story in business. You're going to love this podcast.
So please leave your thoughts. We'd love to hear them. Hit like, hit subscribe, tell a friend. This channel is growing. This podcast is growing, and it's all thanks to you. So thank you very much and enjoy the episode.
Thanks, everybody.
Welcome to Your Gray Matters, the podcast that unveils the miracles already amongst us. Here, we believe that the human mind cannot be defeated. Tune in to discover the fascinating people with extraordinary stories, innovative products, and groundbreaking services. With your host, Neil Silvert, who's earned his gray hair and still has use of his gray matter.
Hi, everybody. I'm Neil from the Your Gray Matters podcast. Of course, we're so glad to have you back. And as you know, if you're following us, and I know you are, we believe that the human mind cannot be defeated. We have so much fun on this podcast introducing great things that exist in this world, but you may not be aware of them. We also introduce you to some really, really terrific people. And we are really excited and really honored today. There is this book right now called Mighty Joe Mewey, a fantastic book which you can buy on Amazon. And we are really excited today because we have a man on who I've been privileged to know for quite a few years. His name is Joe Mewey. We know him as Mighty Joe Mewey. And Joe, welcome to the show. We are glad to have you.
Wow, Neil, thank you. Thank you. And I appreciate the introduction. That's way over the top.
Well, wait, I haven't even begun.
Okay.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, Joe and I share something. We are both born in the year of the horse, 1954. And so we are the same age, but Joe comes from some really humble beginnings. Let me tell you, I sat with Joe last week, and what a story that he has for you today. I love your book, Joe, Mighty Joe Mewey, because it starts off with a quote from a woman named Jeanette Corrins. And she says, and you said, Joe, be grateful for humble beginnings because the next level will require so much more of you. The next level's coming. Get ready. Joe, why did you start your book with that quote?
Well, Neil, I think it's just a reflection of how I felt right from the beginning when we started writing this book, which was 3 years ago. And, it's just how I felt. That's my life. That's how I felt each time that everything that what we've done is a challenging task in front of us. And that's exactly how I feel each time. And that's why it's in the book.
Yep. And I know that you have become very good, very excellent at overcoming challenges. And I love near the end of your book, there's a page, Joe, it says, what makes Joe tick? So let me ask you, Joe, what makes you tick? Maybe tell us a bit of your humble story, the beginnings, because that's a part of the answer for sure.
Well, I'm a type of a person that when you grow up with absolutely nothing, you don't expect anything. So whatever you do, the results that come in is really a surprise for myself. And when you look back at it, it's really of all the hard work that I put into it to get the result that I was looking for. And as you know, if you don't put in the hard work, you're not going to get the result that you're looking for. And that's why it just not surprises me. And that the things that I've done, because like anything else, and you and I know in the marketing business, particularly in the financial business, you have to plan for all those things. And if you don't look forward to the end result, then you're not really doing your job. So that's how
Yeah.
I felt, most of the time. That I've always said that, each day is a challenge for me, even at this old age, at 70, I'm sorry, at this young age of ours, that, you know, each day I have to improve. Because, as they say, you don't improve. If you don't improve, you're going backwards.
So Joe, let's go back to how all of this started for you, because I was flabbergasted about your story. Part I know of what makes you tick is the beautiful history of your mom, but the really, really tough history of where you came from. So let these people know where you were, how you got to Canada, and how all of this started, please.
Well, as far as I can remember, as you know, when we started this journey on writing a book, my colleagues, actually my classmate from Cornell University, the first question he asked me was, he said, "Joe, what type of toys and what kind of school did you go to when you were born in China?" And I look at him and say, "Mr. Quinn, when I was born, it was during the communists that took over China back in 1949, but I wasn't born until 54. But we were lucky just to be alive and hiding in the hills. My parents were hiding in the hills to avoid being drafted into the army. So I said to him, I said, Tom, you know what? We're lucky to have food, let alone going to school and having a bike or whatever. We don't have any of that stuff. So that's my beginning, is to running around all the hills, and I don't remember any of that stuff. So in 1959, I believe, somewhere around there, because I don't remember it. So we walked to Hong Kong because they allow all the people to leave the country if you don't want to be there. So we walked across the border to Hong Kong and stay with my uncle. And that's where we were in, I think it was 60, 61. I can't quite recall the exact time. And so when we got there, we were living in the farm. We couldn't afford to go to school because in Hong Kong at that time, to go to any type of schooling, you have to pay. If you don't have enough money to pay, you can't go to school. So 1963, I believe it was, we finally moved out of the countryside into the city of Kowloon, which is Hong Kong is consists of. Hong Kong is Hong Kong Island and Kowloon, which is right next to China. So when we moved to Kowloon, my mother came to Canada as my grandfather's bride. That's how she came, because there was no other way that she could apply to come. And when
So
she
let's hear that again. She came as your grandmother's
grandfather,
bride,
grandfather's
grandfather's
bride,
bride,
correct.
even though she was his daughter.
Right, right. That's how
Wow.
she applied.
Wow.
Actually, in 58, she applied to come to Toronto. And so she came in 1958. So I really never see my mother after she left in 1958. And finally, in 65, she went to the immigration and declared that she was his daughter. So once you do that, then they apply for us to come. My father, my sisters, one older, one younger, and my grandmother were all living in Kowloon at that time in what we call a
Wow.
rooming house. I still remember the address, 193 Castle Peak Road. One floor, we're on the third floor, has, I think, 9 families. We're all stuck in this one room, and it's one bathroom for all the people that live on our floor, and one kitchen, common kitchen, one common bathroom. But the thing is, Neil, when you haven't experienced anything else, that was good. That was good for us. And
Yep.
it's, as I recall, to get water, because water was rationed at that time. It's still open tap water. They only come on, I think, 4 to 6, the tap water. So you have to fill up all the water with little buckets and carry it back to our room just to store it there to be good enough to use for that day. And to shower,
Wow.
4 to 6. You have to shower. One bathroom between
Wow.
all of us. I think there must
Wow.
be is 25 people, I think, in that one floor. So, yeah, but hey, I didn't know any better. I thought
That's
that
right.
was
You
life.
were a little kid. You were a
Yeah,
little kid.
that was life, so, and we spent 2 years. And finally, my mother applied for us to come to Canada in 1965. We came in March of 1965. The snow had just melted. There's still ice all over the place. And as soon as we got here, we lived way out by Scarborough, which is at Midland and St. Clair. I still remember. It's a long time ago.
Jeepers. Yeah, sure was. And Joe, it's interesting because you got to Canada, you're a little kid,
Yes,
but I meant to ask you, I'm fascinated. Your last name Mui,
yes.
M-U-I, which respectfully doesn't sound like a Chinese name that I've heard of. And I was
Yeah,
curious since my grandkids are Chins.
right.
But the interesting thing, Joe, is tell me about Mui because it's an interesting story how you got your last name, actually.
Well, when we first got here, my brother Stanley and my elder brother came with my mother, and he said, "Well, we'll give you a name, call you Joe." I said, "Okay, Joe." Mui really pronounced in our what they call local terms is Moy, M-O-Y. That's more a reflection of our so-called language in that area. But it doesn't make sense. It's Moy. Nobody understands that. That's not really the English way of translating. Somehow MUI. Somebody gave me MUI. I can't remember. Tell the truth.
So thank you, Joe. And you even told me you didn't even speak Cantonese. You had your own language when you were in
Yes.
China growing up. So fascinating. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you might be wondering why am I asking Joe all of this? Because Joe came to Canada and over the next 65 years to now, turned his life into one of the most fascinating, successful, and beautiful stories that I've heard. For the next few minutes, I want you to meet Mighty Joe Mui. Mighty Joe Mui is a man who has actually taken the immigrant dream and made it happen. That's why I wanted Joe to be on the show, because every single one of us has opportunities, we have dreams, we have goals, and Mighty Joe Mui actually proves that it can be done. And Joe, with that, I want to start moving into the area of where you're known so well. You're known so well as a wonderful, good human being,
Thank you.
businessman, but you're also a sports professional. Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about a gentleman who grew to the very tall height of 5'3", became one of the greatest sports people that you could ever meet. And Joe, I want to ask you a question. The late, great Pele, who you actually faced off against,
Yes.
everybody, Pele, he coined soccer as the beautiful game. Joe, why is soccer called the beautiful game?
Well, I think came from the Brazilian Pele. The way they play the game itself, it's just so good to watch. It's like I can put a little comparison between the NHL hockey and the Russian hockey. Before the so-called the series in 1971, as you remember, the Canada-Russian series, two contrasting styles. Canada dump and run, dump the puck in, and the Russians keep it and they just keep it until they score or until they lose the puck. And same difference between the Brazilian and anybody else in the world. Just the skills and the way they can dribble the ball. That's why they call it the beautiful game.
I see. I think it's also beautiful, Joe, because kids can actually play it without their parents taking out a mortgage for them to play this sport.
True. Yes, it's a Phuket sport because all you need is a little ball and away you go. Much
Yeah,
like
and
basketball, in the old days, in the NBA days, it's meant for lower class people, as you and I both know.
yes, and I remember being introduced to it, as I told you, 1967, grade 7, fascinating to me. So, ladies and gentlemen, Joe comes to this country. comes from nothing. He's living in Scarborough. Years go by, and all of a sudden, Joe ends up in an Ivy League school called Cornell University. You've all heard of it. Joe, how the heck does little Joe get into Cornell University? Take us on the ride. And while you're doing it, maybe talk about some of the great people who you've met along the way, because this really is a life of dreams come true.
Well, thank you, Neil. Take me back, way back. I started soccer 1967. I asked my history teacher at Victoria Village Public School, and I forgot his name, as I was an English gentleman, and I forgot his name. Like I said, well, look, I come from Hong Kong. Of course, I play soccer. Of course, I never touched a ball in my life. He said, I want to play soccer, because, I'm from Hong Kong. Of course, if they all play soccer, it's like I'm from Brazil. So he found a soccer club. It's called St. Andrew Soccer Club. So in 67, I joined the St. Andrew Soccer Club, where most of our coaches were British and English and Scottish. So I learned to speak with an English accent. Go figure. But so I played the house league. Then the next year I played on the select team. In 69, I made the Canada team that went to visit England. And that was June to September of 1969. We landed in Aberdeen, Scotland. It was just strange. It was just strange. And, just like 4 years ago, in 65, I landed in Canada. So we were there, and the newspaper, I still remember, in Aberdeen, he said, who the hell is this Canadian guys come to play soccer against us? Which is like, the soccer world, the soccer center of the world, England and Scotland. And it's funny, we landed in Aberdeen in August, first week in August, I believe. First game we won 8-0. The second game we won 8-1. We finished the tour with 11 wins, 1 tied. That was our record, 11-1. 1 tied. And everybody was just, holy smoke, who are these kids? So from then on, our club at that time was sponsored by a pub called Mansion House out of Danforth and Pharmacy. And we were called the best club team in the world at that time. That was 70, 71, which gathered a lot of interesting peek at, who the hell are these guys? Excuse my French. And so we got a lot of ink on that. So a lot of clubs, particularly in the States, were looking to have us to go down and play them. And in Rochester at that time, back then we have what they call the North American Soccer League. And Rochester had a team called the Rochester Lancers. And Toronto was called the Toronto Blizzards. I was invited to play in a so-called pre-game for the NASL between Toronto and Rochester to play in Rochester. So I never even heard of Rochester. I'd never been out of Toronto. Wow, other than when I played with the soccer team. So I went down and played a game, and the Cornell coaches saw me play because that was a big thing then. And Cornell is in Ithaca, New York, which is about an hour south of Rochester. So they invited us to go play an exhibition game against their team. So I went down and played. And because of my tryout with the Toronto Blizzard, a couple of the coaches, one from Ohio University out of Akron, Ohio, came up in the Christmas of 71. He said, look, Joe, I want you to come and play for us. He's a Canadian, and here's your acceptance letter, No idea what he was talking about. So I said, okay, that sounds good. And also Harvard sent me a letter saying, look, we love you to come, It's what they call the letter of intent. So in 72, August of 72, the coach by the name of Dan Wood, he called me up. He said, well, look, he goes, Millie, what the heck are you doing? This is July of August. Our training camp starts in a month. He said, you better decide to come to Cornell. So I looked at him. I said, oh, okay. I said, wait a minute. Harvard is in Boston. It's about a 9-hour drive from Toronto, 9 or 10, depending how fast you drive. Akron is 6 hours from Toronto. Whereas Ithaca, New York is only 4. I said, okay, fine. Yeah, maybe I want to be close to home. So I chose to go to Cornell instead. That was my only reason that I went to Cornell, because it was the closest to Toronto. And that's how I wound
Wow.
up at Cornell.
That's a fun that's a funny story. And actually, I remember you told me you've met some amazing people who actually went to Cornell. But even before that, you got to tell this story, Joe. And I'm not digressing. This is part of your
Okay.
great life. How does a young Joe Muley end up with a young guy who is to become an amazing action movie figure, Jackie Chan? How the heck did you end up with Jackie Chan?
Well, it's funny. As you know, Cornell is in the Ivy League, which means our competition is against all the Ivy League school. And so we play against Columbia. And we always been home and away, home and away. So we're home this year, it's away that year. So in 74, we were playing in Columbia. And it just so happens that year I was on the cover of the Cornell soccer program because I was the leading scorer every year except my junior year. So they attracted a lot of people to come and watch the game. I think it was called Baker Field. Of course, there were a lot of Chinese students at Columbia, rightly so, because it has a big Chinese population in New York. So I thought nothing of it. I think I scored like 2 or 3 goals that game, and we beat them like 4-0 or something. They were terrible at that time. I'm sorry, Columbia. They became good now, so but that's just during my days. And 75, just prior to exam, my final year, 76 actually, we have a couple of weeks off. So a gentleman calls me up. His name is Mr. Chow. Anyway, we call him Chow Chai. I mean, just a nickname. It's like Johnny, it's Chowy. So he calls me up and I said, yes. He said, is this Joe? I said, yes. This is Chow Chai. This is Chow. I said, okay. I don't know who you are. He said, well, I came and saw you play at Columbia, and I'm taking a team to the Far East to play exhibition games in Taiwan and Hong Kong. Would you like to come? I said, wow, holy smoke. And I said, and you're paying for everything? He said, yes, I am. I said, okay, fine. I'm down. So that was during the study week, that 2 weeks. So I flew to Taiwan and played. As soon as we get off the Taipei International Airport, Jackie Chan, Marshall Hong, and the Seven Wonders, they were called. That martial arts school have 7 of them. Jackie Chan was one of them. And of course, at that time, he was not world famous. And I said, who the hell are these kids? It turns out the gentleman that invited me to the tournament is the husband of the elder sister of those 7 people. And
Wow.
because she's coming from New York, all the students that below them has to come and pick them, greet them at the airport. And I said, who the hell are these people? It was funny. And of course, they were big time in Asia at that time, Neil. It was a privilege. Like I said, it was just so new to me. I had no idea where I was. So that's
Yeah.
that's how I got to play back in Hong Kong and met my wife because of that.
Wow. So you met your wife and you met Jackie Chan. I mean, what could be better?
For him and for me.
But Joe, you actually became a superstar at Cornell in the soccer game. I mean, to this day, you're recognized and remembered as one of Cornell's greatest athletes. And I've seen a picture of you in 2005 when you
Yes.
were honored as one of Cornell's top athletes that year. I found it fabulous. When I was sitting with you, though, last week and we were going over this, I was flabbergasted by the people who you met, who you
Yes.
know now, who
Yes.
went to Cornell. And folks, this is interesting because young man comes from China, has a skill to play soccer, ends up in an Ivy League school. Think about your own dreams and goals. And the next thing you know, he finds out that people who are important to Canadians, like Ken Dryden, had
Yes.
been at Cornell. Maybe talk about some of these people who you met and who you know to this day, not just to name drop, Joe,
Yes.
but because you actually fit in with them.
Oh,
That's the point I'm trying to make.
you see, the thing about my philosophy and how I treat people is that we're all equal. We're all the same. Just because I do what I do, it doesn't mean that I'm better than you. That and this and that. I'll tell you a funny story, which nobody. I think it was in a book. So in 1978 season, 77, 78 season, I was ruled by Pittsburgh Spirit, the major indoor soccer league team, just starting out in 1978. The owner of the team met me in Cleveland, Ohio, while I was coaching his son. And he came up to me, and I think it was the middle of July. He said, "Joe, I'm going to start an indoor soccer league team in Pittsburgh. You know, I want you to be the first guy to come and join us." I look at him and say, "Yeah, all right, all right, guy." I don't know who he was, just some white guy that, that's what he said. It turns out he calls me 2 weeks later. I was wrestling at Cornell, and he said, "Look, I'll fly you in, and I want you to do a bowling tournament with us." Bowling tournament? What the heck is it? I never even heard of bowling myself. I said, "Okay." So I flew in, and it's called Allegheny Airline. I don't know if you remember that airline.
I do. I do.
I flew in, and so we were practicing, and he had a guy that, put me through some kind of drills or whatever, the coach himself, Bruno Swartz, I think his name was. I went through all the exercise. That night, I was to join the celebrity bowling tournament by the Pittsburgh Pirates. I don't even remember the Pirates. They just won the World Series at that time. And also the Pittsburgh Steelers. Terry
Wow,
Bradshaw
football.
was the quarterback. Terry Bradshaw was there, and Franco
That
Harris, the big
Lynn
brother,
Swan.
Lynn Swan, Dave
Yeah.
Gardner of the Pirates, David Parker of the Pirates. So we're all sitting at one table signing autographs, all the Pittsburgh team.
Wow.
And kids walk by and say, "Oh, okay, here's Franco Harris. Let's get his signature." Then he said, "Here's Terry Bradshaw." Then he showed me his signature. Who is this kid?
Dreams come true.
Funny. That was something else. That was just really. I mean, I knew all these guys because I watched all the. Dan Marino was there at that time as well. He was just graduating from the University of
Yeah.
Pittsburgh, going to Miami, I think. So there was. I mean, I'm not starstruck because I'm just one of the guys, really. And I
Yeah.
think you have to be an even keel, and yeah, of course they do all the things and all that stuff.
I was fascinated because I think some of the people you've talked about, and we're not going to name drop, but when I hear names like Bruce Arena, Larry Tannenbaum, Buck Briggs, the CEO of Hyundai, I mean,
Yes.
what a story you have. But I was floored, Joe, when we were sitting together. And ladies and gentlemen, again, here's the book. You will learn much more about Joe. Joe, you told me very simply that you're here just to be Joe. You're not here to compare yourself with anybody else. Just be Joe. Tell us more about that because that's an important statement.
Well, how they say you have to stay true to yourself. If I start listening, because I'll tell you one story. When I came back visiting Cornell, playing that one game, of course I was wearing a Cornell T-shirt at Vic Park High School, and I think that was my geography teacher. And he walks by me and he said, "Mui, I think that's a little premature, isn't it? You're wearing a Cornell T-shirt, a little premature. You know what type of student I am and all this stuff." But the thing is, people always make comments. You know that, whether it's negative or positive. But people, any decade, are always so negative. When's the last time you hear a positive statement? "Oh, the economy stinks. Today's politics is this, and this, is it." But, it doesn't mean anything to me. If you start getting attached or getting whatever it is that gets you involved in that, you're going to lose your focus yourself. At that time,
Yes.
my focus was just to go through school, play soccer, which I really enjoy, and just get on with my life. I don't care. I couldn't care less what's going on. I mean, does it affect me? Yes, in a certain way, but you have to stay true to what your path is and go on and do your things. Just because they say, "Well, you could do it this way, you could do it this way." But you know what? I couldn't do what a 6'1" guy could do. I mean, he couldn't do what I could do.
Right.
You start saying, "Yeah, well, I couldn't do this, I couldn't do that." Well, you can't do anything, Neil. I mean, that's life.
Yes.
You saw a couple pictures in my office where I can outjump everyone. It's not that I'm taller than them. It's just that, my timing is better than theirs. If my
Yes.
timing
Well,
is good, I get ahead of them. I get to the ball first. The important thing is get to the ball first. It's not to say,
yeah,
I guess he's taller and I can't go there. Then you might as well go home. I mean, that's how I feel. Even today, I still feel the same way.
that's right.
I,
So you stay focused on yourself and be the best that you can be, and try to hopefully find the joy in being you.
I shoot about 1,000 balls a day, and I use a tennis ball to improve my technical skills.
Well, you've touched so many literally hundreds of thousands of people's lives, Joe. Young boy comes out of China, ends up a terrific and well-loved athlete. I know you to be a wonderful and honorable businessman. I have to ask you, though, I just heard the other day that in 2026, Canada's hosting the
World Cup.
2026
Yes.
FIFA World Cup with
Yes.
the USA Mexico. There's going to be games in Toronto. Any comments on that?
Well, I hope I can get tickets to go. Qatar 2022 SC. I'm wearing a jersey from Qatar. I went to the World Cup. I saw Canada play. So yeah, I'm a big supporter. I'm a hometown fan. I've always been.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, Joe, I want to thank you for coming on today. Ladies and gentlemen, Joe's book, Mighty Joe Mewey, is already in the top 10 books being sold on Amazon, which is where you can get it. We encourage you. Joe, I got to ask you, do you think your book's going to be a movie?
You know, I had a dream the other day. It's funny. I don't often dream, and I hope it does, that I was on the Tonight Show.
Wow.
Hopefully.
Well, what we'll do is we'll put this podcast on at nighttime. Then you could say, everybody, I just want to tell you, please order your copy of Mighty Joe Mewey. And let me just tell you, not only is it about the beautiful game, but you will find this to be the beautiful book. Joe, thanks so much for being on the Your Gray Matters podcast.
Thank you.
Everybody, we'll see you again soon with another great story of great people like the mighty Joe Mewey.